Good evening, Professor Partha Chatterjee, the faculty from KMC and students from KMC and from University of Delhi, and welcome to the event organized by La Polity, Department of Political Science, Kirurimal College, University of Delhi, on this very significant and critical issue of COVID-19 and the Indian economy, assessing its impact. So COVID-19 has been referred to as mother of all disruption. The virus has brought almost everything to a grinding halt, and its impact has been manifold, diverse, and almost devastating. It is said that COVID-19 has fundamentally altered the conventional and the traditional structures and systems, and some of them perhaps for ever. COVID has actually wreaked havoc in almost all the sectors, from education to business to airlines to supply chains, health, tourism, travel, hospitality, you name it. And the economics of many countries have actually contracted in double digit, and data from the first two quarters of 2020 clearly shows that the output contracted more sharply than it did in the year 2008 and 2009 during the global financial crisis. So the estimates for the year 2020 point to the global recession matching to that of the Great Depression of the 1930s. And we need to also keep in mind that we are we are still within the pandemic phase, and we are seeing this big surge again in Europe, and the Indian COVID caseload has increased to or jumped to almost 7 million. So it is also sort of projected that about 90 million to about 120 million people will be pushed to extreme and abject poverty in the developing countries. And also about in these kind of emerging economies, nearly 300 million will be facing food insecurity. So undoubtedly, the greatest economic and the social damage will be on these vulnerable emerging economies, where the levels of the informality is very high, and where the commodities and tourism are the major source of foreign exchange, and the fiscal space has already been squeezed under the mountain of debt. So the reality is that the informal sector of the economy have been worsted, and it's same true for India also, where some estimates say that for the month of April and June, the GDP contraction, if we keep in mind the informal sector, was as high as 35%. Of course, the official figures which were released was about 23.9% contraction of the GDP, which is enormous, which is huge. So the lockdown cost also nearly 10 million migrant workers their jobs, and they left cities, and many of them actually made this grueling journey back to their villages and hometowns of Bihar and UP. And now they face another ordeal of trying to get back to the cities to find new jobs in cities like Delhi and Mumbai. Coupled with this, the very sort of muted response brutally exposed the existing vulnerabilities of the Indian economy. The International Monetary Fund, in its recent World Economic Outlook report, which was released just about 10 days back, significantly downgrades the Indian economic or fiscal growth to minus 10.3%. However, IMF also sort of says that Indian economic growth is likely to jump back to 8.8% by the year 2021. But that certainly sort of needs a greater ramped up and synchronization by policy makers and formulators and policy executors. So India, like rest of the world, is facing this acute Caesar's effect of decreasing tax revenues due to the subdued economic activity and rising expenditure due to the higher demand for health and social protection in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. So the forecasters are in fact talking of different shapes of recovery. Some are saying that we're going to have V-shaped recovery. RBI governor is talking about W-shaped recovery. Some have invented this K-shaped recovery for India, and some are sort of forecasting U-shaped recovery with a wider base. So clearly the economy is sort of mired with this sort of alphabet soup, and no one really accurately knows what shape it is going to take in next 1 or 2 years. So certainly the government sort of needs to do more in the conditions, and because if you just have to compare data, the India's pandemic assistance amounted to just about 1% of the GDP. And when we compare it to the US package for the month of March, which was sort of nearly 10% of the GDP. So what I believe is the primary focus of the fiscal stimulus has to be on the informal sector, on the micro and the small and the medium-sized self-employed and the casual workers that have been worst hit during the lockdown and during the subsequent disruptions. So to decode and provide us perspective about the health of the Indian economy, we have with us Professor Partha Chatterjee. Dr. Chatterjee is a professor of economics and Dean International Partnership at Shiv Nadar University. He is the head of the Department of Economics, and as Dean International Partnership, he's responsible for developing the university's global strategy and implementation of international partnership and strategic engagement across the world. As the first head of the economics department, he has built the department, which is now established as one of the premier economics department in the country. Professor Chatterjee did his PhD from University of Minnesota, USA, and Dr. Chatterjee's research interests are broadly in the domain of macroeconomics, international economics, issues related to emerging economies. And he completed his MPhil in economics from Indira Gandhi Institute of Development and Research, Mumbai, and MSc and BSc from Jadavpur University. Previously, Dr. Chatterjee was a faculty member at NUS Business School, National University of Singapore, and Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi, India. He also has a keen interest in the issues related to higher education, particularly in India, and is a member of CII, Higher Education Council. So very warm welcome to Professor Partha Chatterjee, and looking forward to hearing from you your perspective about the significant issue which is impacting us all, that is, what is the state of or the health of the Indian economy during the COVID-19 period. So over to you, Professor Partha Chatterjee. Thanks a lot.